Good evening. Some have described it as the worst humanitarian crisis since the Second World War. But for one group of Scottish doctors, scenes of hope were found in the Calais jungle. STV News travelled with the medical volunteers to one of Europe's largest refugee camps as they delivered medical aid, clothing and tents. They say they want to provide hope to the thousands of people living there, while reminding people back home of their ongoing plight. From Calais, Amy Irons sends this report.
A landscape scarred by the devastation of foreign wars. The infamous Calais jungle is being ripped apart, tent by tent, shelter by shelter, by the French authorities. Amongst the charred remains are reminders of the near 6,000 people who call this camp home. I met two brothers from Afghanistan who've been left with nothing but each other and the clothes on their back.
Like I met my own tent over here. So they demolish it. I ask them, request them. I have so many things of mine inside that. So they come with a bulldozer and they demolish it. Like my clothes, everything.
Saber and Sadiq have family in the UK, but due to strict border controls, their hopes of joining them look bleak. It's the same for thousands of refugees who've trekked from the likes of Syria, Sudan and Iraq.
Our government allows 45 countries to be come in Afghanistan with the troops. And the 45 countries cannot defeat a small organization like a Taliban. They come with their own policies. They extract everything which Afghanistan have. So we all left in Afghanistan. We have no jobs. There was the security problems. So that's why we came to Europe to seek for the happiness of us. And my happiness is crossing to the border, and it's been 8 years that I couldn't reach my happiness.
The land you're seeing here used to be home to thousands of people, but after days of demolition, they've all been forced to move elsewhere. But here, where we're standing, is a stark reminder that children continue to be caught up in this crisis. Many of them and their mothers live in large shipping containers separated by fencing and fingerprint entry.
You want me to help you?
Geraldine's a doctor from Paisley who's come to offer her support. She's one of 50 volunteers who've travelled from across Scotland to deliver aid.
It's very different from what I was expecting. There's definitely such a sense of community which we hadn't got an idea of from what we've seen in the TV before coming. There are plenty of people willing to help, but what actually nobody is doing is thinking, where are these people going to go? So there are people willing to help on a day-to-day basis, but not, from what I can see, to find any real solution, long-lasting.
I think the one thing that is quite amazing is that in amongst this chaos, there's these little communities, there's restaurants, there's barbers, there's a church, a mosque, people just doing whatever they can to try and get some sense of normality in amongst all this. And for most people, building some kind of neighbourhood seems like a good place to start. Tahir's from Pakistan. He set up a restaurant where he sleeps every night.
It's not a good life, it's not for the people, and but we have no other choice. We had to stay here if you want to go forward. If you don't want to go forward, you should go back then. But the people living in here, they have the aim to go forward. That's it.
And even the smallest of gestures can offer some comfort.
Thank you, very good, very nice.
Well, I wanted to do it and bring it here. Just for the people here, because I care about them.
Despite showing a wave of support, every volunteer wants to do more.
What we've done today is just a drop in the ocean, bringing donations down for people and helping where we can, but really, really devastated that there's not more that we could do, because the human tragedy around here is just awful.
Amy Irons, STV News, Calais.
The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has been confronted by angry residents in her constituency of Govanhill in Glasgow, who say people are living in squalid conditions that are going from bad to worse. Glasgow City Council and the Scottish Government have spent nearly £10 million to buy out private properties that are decaying and overcrowded. Despite the efforts, locals say they are still living in conditions which have no place in the 21st century.
I can only say, please help us. It's just like we are living like animals.
All these pictures and all these videos.
Oh, there's a rat!
Oh my God. This is just disgusting.
You're only about 5 minutes away from Hampden Park. Is this nearly Glasgow? Is this nearly the 21st century?
A walk through Govan Hill in 2016, a place where home has become hell, with scenes that revolt and disgust in equal measure.
The place is a shambles. It's stinking, it's manky, and we will continue campaigning. We are not going to stop.
Me, I'm cleaning everything, everything. I'm going here. That is mine here space.
I don't want to stay here and don't want to live here. Please give me some place where I want to go, because I don't want to stay here. It's a lot of problems. Sometimes I call the police, sometimes call the hub. Nothing, all is helpless.
Amir took us inside his close to show us the dire conditions of this private tenement. Essential repairs by landlords are clearly ignored.
It's nearly 2 or 3 years this happened, and this all is because they're renting property. The people who is managing this property, who don't care about that. I told the guy who is managing this one, you need to do this one. You need to do it, but nothing.
Amir's story isn't unique. In an area of overcrowding and high concentrations of private landlords, conditions like this have plagued Govan Hill for years. The Scottish Government and Glasgow City Council have highlighted it as a high priority area and are ploughing in nearly £10 million into a scheme which aims to buy out these properties and get them into some kind of control. But the problem is so big that local campaigners here say it's not enough and confronted the First Minister while she was in her own constituency last weekend.
I know that there's elderly people and hundreds of families living in a ghetto where there's infestations of rat, bed lice, cockroaches and vermin. And I take it you've seen the videos of the back courts. Have you ever done a selfie in the back courts?
Yeah, I raised the issue to the back courts repeatedly. You know what, you want to come to my surgery anytime.
Well, I take the view that it's less productive to talk about who's responsible and more productive to talk about how me as MSP, the local councillors, the Scottish Government, the Council, the police, different agencies work together to resolve these problems, and that's what I will continue to be focused on.
STV News showed our footage to the director of Shelter Scotland.
These are unbelievable, to think that people are living in these conditions in 21st century Scotland. Everything about that is wrong. Scotland has done a great deal over the last 25, 30 years to actually improve its housing, but quite clearly we need more still to be done.
For all agencies involved, getting Govan Hill out of this dire situation is a complex problem which will take time. But for some residents here, it already feels like a life sentence.
Well, like Scotland, Gibraltar voted overwhelmingly to remain in the EU. The First Minister is already in talks with the territory, trying to strike a deal to argue for retained membership. Those living on the peninsula say the link with Europe is vital for their economy and livelihoods. From Gibraltar, Amy Irons has this special report.
Gibraltar's vote to remain within the EU was as strong as the rock on which this territory stands. 95% of voters chose to stay, and now the Chief Minister has revealed he's been in talks with First Minister Nicola Sturgeon over a potential deal to remain, which could see England and Wales leaving the EU, with pro-European nations and territories sticking with the status quo. Here in Gibraltar, it's very much like Little Britain, but walk down any of the streets and you can hear a variety of different languages and accents. Being an EU member, of course, has benefited this territory through its turbulent relationship with neighbouring Spain. And everyone I've spoken to seems determined that some kind of arrangement has come to see them maintain their place within the EU.
I would love if there was a deal with Scotland and Northern Ireland. All the sections have voted to remain. We're staying in the United Kingdom. It is Wales and England that are leaving the United Kingdom.
I am aware of the talks that have been given with Gibraltar and Scotland and Northern Ireland. But I mean, it's a shame, it's a big shame, because we've fought so long to remain British that it's having to get to this point.
There's all kind of nationalities here, but you'd think it was all the one nationality, if you know what I mean, because everybody kind of speaks to each other sort of thing. and maybe they can get some sort of deal going business-wise between Scotland and Gibraltar.
We can't really go it alone without the UK, for us personally, I don't think. But I think if we could sort something out with Scotland and Ireland, then we could maybe get rid of England.
Reverend Ewan McLean is from the Western Isles. 7 years ago, he moved from Glasgow to the Rock and says the EU is a solid, unifying force in this part of the world.
You can see our stained glass windows. I'm a Scot. I'm living in Gibraltar. I've certainly enjoyed the opportunity of coming to live here, to work here, to be part of a very different community, that a solution is found for Gibraltar to remain part of the EU, and maybe that will require us to have some type of agreement with Scotland, and that of course will be very interesting.
While we might be thousands of miles away, the view here mirrors the general view of Scots that when it comes to Europe, we're better in this together. Amy Irons, STV News, Gibraltar.